Hey guys, this is Izzy with another Should You Pull video, and in this video we're going to be looking at the Drill Electric banner that is currently running live, featuring 5-star operators Reed and Broca. This banner is running alongside the Nightingale Angelina banner, so if you want to know about this banner, check out the video on that. I actually pulled Reed for my guaranteed 5-star, leveled her up a bit, currently Elite 1 level 35 on this account. But yeah, let's get into this banner. First and foremost, I want to sort of apologize because I know that the video on the previous banner, the Angelina and Nightingale banner, while fairly in depth, I know it was a bit of a long video, and also the audio was a bit lower than expected. So hopefully this video will solve those problems. Still working on the formatting for these videos and figuring out sort of how much detail I want to go into the operators. I obviously do want to go pretty in depth on the operators, but that obviously is going to come with a higher video time, which I know isn't necessarily what everyone wants. So without further ado, let's jump in and start with Reed. So Reed falls into the DP on kill archetype. She is a Vanguard, and this archetype has this trait where it obtains 1 DP upon killing an enemy, and it refunds the original DP cost of the unit when they're retreated. In terms of their stat spread, they're generally characterized by a higher attack value but lower defenses, and can only block a single unit. So the name of this game, the name of the game for this archetype is to just kill stuff. You want them to kill units because it's how they generate DP, and 2, if like multiple units are coming towards them, because they can only block 1 unit at a time, you need them to kill the first unit very quickly. So looking at Reed's skills, she's got 2 skills that help her out with this sort of task that she has. Swift Strike is an overall DPS increase in the form of a attack damage steroid and an attack speed buff, so hitting harder, hitting faster. It's got fairly good uptime, fairly reasonable costs, nothing super special, but a fairly good skill. Soul Spark is the skill that you will pretty much be using from Elite 1 on. It's her main skill, a little bit marginally cheaper, I suppose, and has a bit of a decrease in downtime, but it's got 3 really good buffs that synergize with her role. So the first is a much heftier 60% attack damage steroid. This is at rank 7, obviously. So that's just sort of to compensate for the fact that you're not getting the bonus attack speed, you're getting a much higher steroid. In addition to that, after you've gained your plus 60 attack damage, every attack that you do is going to deal an additional 25% of your attack damage as arts damage. That's great because arts damage ignores defense and is reduced by enemies' res, and in most cases, enemies will have higher defense than res. So all in all, this is a great skill for dishing out more and more damage. And the last part of her skill is plus 1 DP upon defeating an enemy, and that just doubles her DP generation, because then she'll get 1 DP from her trait and then 1 DP for while Soul Spark is active. All in all, this is a phenomenal skill. This is exactly the type of skill you want on a unit of this archetype. Just generate more DP and help you kill stuff so that you can generate more DP. Where Reed sort of starts to lose a bit of focus is her talent, Blighted Blood. It increases res by plus 20. Now, the talent itself is actually really good. Plus 20 res is definitely nothing to scoff at. Generally, when units gain a self-res buff like this, like you, for example, see it in the Defender Liskarm, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, it's usually a plus 10 res buff, and so to be able to get 20 is really, really good. The problem is, for a unit of this archetype, which is primarily focused on offense, having a random defensive talent is sort of iffy. Like, it's not really what you're looking to see. The one thing that this talent opens up for her is for the ability to use her as a sort of caster assassin. So basically, if an enemy caster is coming towards you, you can sort of drop Reed to block them off and 1v1 them, just because the res is going to help her take less damage, and casters generally don't have much defense, so she'll be doing fairly good amounts of damage to them. Yeah, but aside from that, I would have loved to see a more offensive talent, kind of like Vigna's crit hit talent. So, all in all, I think Reed is a solid unit, but I don't think that you should pull on the Spanner specifically for Reed. I think that her 4-star counterpart, Vigna, does the job well enough, more often than not. Vigna comes in with higher attack damage throughout most of their time leveling up. It isn't really up until like E2 that Reed ends up getting more attack, and that's mainly due to all of the bonus levels that she's getting for being a 5-star unit. And even then, Vigna has higher attack damage modifiers on her second skill. It's actually a massive modifier on Vigna's second skill, so she ends up having a higher attack damage anyway. Moreover, due to Vigna's talent, which potentially further increases her attack damage every now and then, I believe it's 10% by itself, but 30% on a skill active, she'll generally be performing higher attack damage, physical attack damage anyway, than Reed. The main advantages that I see in the form of Reed are the addition of this arts damage, which is going to allow her to hit like higher defense enemies and deal more damage to them, and her DP generation while the skill is active, I think definitely is a nice increase. Aside from that, I don't really think she provides much over Vigna, so if you have Vigna and you have her leveled up, I would not drop Vigna just to level up Reed. And if you don't have Reed, I would not like heavily invest on this banner for Reed. Let's move on to, I guess this is going to be Broca is how I'm going to pronounce it, so again, apologies if that's wrong. He is a guard, and he falls into the archetype of AoE guard, and so they're all characterized by this trait of attack all blocked enemies. I believe this is actually an incorrect translation. The correct translation is that they can attack enemies up to their block count as long as the enemies are within their range. So even if they're not blocking them, if they have 3 enemies in their range and they can block 3 enemies, they'll hit those 3 enemies. So this archetype is characterized as mainly having a block of 2 that then goes up to 3 upon promotion to Elite 2. Yeah, so let's look at his first skill, Galvanize. Galvanize is an attack steroid of plus 50% at rank 7, and it converts all your normal damage into arts damage, which is really, really good. That means that while the skill is active, Broca will be able to deal great damage even to high defense enemies, because again, that arts damage is just ignoring the enemy's defense. It has one major advantage in that it's actually a fairly lengthy skill to charge up and use. And so for that reason, generally people will be using his second skill, which is really just his first skill on steroids. With a few like demerits to compensate for the fact that he has these massive increase in percentages. So his attack speed gets slower, but to compensate for that, he gets a increase to his attack range. So he basically just gets 1 additional tile that he normally has, so he can attack enemies 2 tiles in front of him. I believe this is the same attack range that you would get with Blaze with her second skill active. Then he gets a very large modifier of 140% in terms of an attack steroid. That's really, really good, obviously. Like his first skill, all of that gets converted into arts damage, and then it also gets an additional slow of 0.9 seconds. The slow might not seem like much, but basically it makes it take that much longer for enemies to actually get in front of Broca and actually start dealing damage to him. And because he's dealing massive arts damage to enemies, he can definitely shred through plenty of weaker enemies before they even get a chance to hit him, just with the slow and the extra tile range. There is one major demerit, which is that he self-stuns himself for 6 seconds after his skill ends. And that's really important because while a melee unit is self-stunned, they aren't blocking anything, and so enemies can just walk right past them. So his talent is a percentage increase of 12% to attack and defense when blocking 2 or more enemies. It's kind of okay-ish, like it's not really something that's super amazing, but it's just something that's there. So Broca's main advantages over his counterparts are really going to be his damage. He is very single-mindedly focused on damage, and he dishes out damage tremendously well, particularly with his second skill active. I believe he is probably doing even more damage than Blaze, just because while Blaze does get a nice attack damage modifier with her second skill, she's not really getting the conversion to arts damage. That said, once Blaze's second skill is active, it's permanent, whereas Broca's is only lasts for 25 seconds at rank 7. So there's that to factor in. But Broca is one of the units that really does compete with, that really can shred out a lot of damage, and that's obviously really good. The one thing that I would say is sort of a big weakness of Broca is his defenses. Obviously, like, he's not the other units in this archetype usually have some form of hard survivability. So his other 5-star counterpart is Spectre, and her second skill, which is I believe called Bone Fracture in English, while active, she just gets like complete death immunity, and her HP can't fall below 1. And Blaze, I believe, also has in her talent the ability so that her HP won't fall below 50% while for a few seconds. And that's something that Broca lacks. He doesn't have that sort of form of hard survivability, and that's kind of important for an archetype that isn't really like super tanky. Like, they can block 3 units just like defenders can, but they don't have the same like ridiculously high defense or like even the same HP values in the case of Broca as those units. So that's another thing you're going to need to like keep in mind and keep in the back of your head, and something you're going to need to plan for is that Broca is not built to sort of take any big hits like Blaze and Spectre can. But as long as you're willing to like work around that weakness, you end up with a very high defensive unit. Sorry, not high defensive unit, with a very high damage dealing unit, and that's something that you might definitely be looking forward to having on your team. In terms of should you pull specifically for Broca, I think that really depends. If you pulled Blaze on the previous banner, I would say this is a hard pass. Blaze overall is going to be the better unit, just because she's with her second skill active, she's going to have that big increase in damage that she's going to keep permanently for the rest of the map, and she also has that form of survivability in her talents. That said, if you don't have any AoE guards, then Broca definitely is serviceable, definitely more than serviceable. If you're looking for a purely offensive guard, he's more than serviceable in that role. You will just have to compensate for the self-stun and for the lack of hard survival. If you have Spectre, for example, I think the debate becomes a bit more interesting. I think that Spectre overall is a bit more useful just because of the death immunity, but Broca certainly has some advantages going for him, and that's again mainly his offense. Actually, interesting to note that both Spectre and Broca have a self-stun on their second skills, so that's actually something that's kind of common to this archetype. But yeah, that sort of is it for Broca and for the rest of this video. So yeah, hopefully in the future I plan to be getting out more videos, so definitely stay tuned for that. But aside from that, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.